Reeves Immigration Law Group now brings you immigration law on your side.
All right, good evening mga kababayan and welcome to another Immigration Law on your side right here on PHLV Radio. Maganda pag-usapan natin yon kasi you might have heard it sa mga famous na mga artista at iba pang mga tao when they adopt somebody from outside of the United States. Mga kaibigan, when a U.S. citizen wants to adopt a child from another country, they have to follow steps and submit documentation to make the process legal. Must be a very, very complicated process siguro. Alamin natin. Under the U.S. immigration law, there are three different types or three different processes by which someone can immigrate to another country based on intercountry adoption. Yan mga kababayan ang ipaliliwanag sa ating ngayong gabi ni Flomy Diza, partner at Reeves Immigration Law Group. Ngayong gabi na, galing po sa San Francisco, California. Attorney Diza, magandang gabi po sa iyo.
Magandang gabi Kuya Johan at binabati ko rin ng mga viewers and listeners natin na isang magandang gabi. Today is April 26 at tama ka, maganda ang pag-usapan natin dahil marami ang magtatanong sa atin na how can I bring my nephews, nieces or grandchildren who are already like orphan or the parents are unable to support them. So there's a lot of consultations regarding how to bring children, right, from the Philippines or from other parts of outside the United States.
Yeah, tulad ng intro natin, attorney, ilan sa mga kababayan natin na excite sa topic na ito kasi alam mo naman marami mga artista and people na kilala na nag-a-adapt ng kanilang mga children from another country, from Africa or from wherever, no? Pero siyempre, hindi lang po ito sa mga taong mga sikat, mga artista. Anyone can do this. So there are different types. Attorney, paliwanag natin sa kanila, paano po ba mag-adapt ng kanilang mga children or child from another country?
Yes, may tatlong paraan po tayo na gagawin or the three processes as you mentioned, no, para makapag-adapt ng children outside the United States in order for them to immigrate in the US. So, yung unang-una dyan is yung tinatawag natin na Hague, yung HAGUE, because the Philippines and the United States, they are part or the signatory rather of the Hague Convention adoption. So yun unang step. Then there's also what we call the now if the country that you're trying to adopt, a child is a country where it's not part of the Hague process, Hague Convention, because you remind lang natin mga viewers natin that the Hague Adoption Convention, the country needs to be a signatory para para mag-comply or under the process ng Hague. But if they were not part of the Hague process, mayroon tinatawag na orphan adoption. Now, there's also the third step, which is bago dumating lahat itong Hague adoption process and the orphan adoption, meron na yung tinatawag na I-130, right? Immigrant visa petition for adopted children. So ito yung parang pagpe-petition din sa mga biological or stepchildren, the same process, but there are additional process para mag-comply sila doon sa immigrant visa petition for adopted children.
Attorney, in our community, in the Filipino-American community, dito po sa, for example, dyan sa California, marami mga Pilipino dyan. Marami po bang ganong sitwasyon na marami sa ating mga kababayan na nag-a-adapt ng mga bata galing sa Pilipinas?
Yes, there are many who are inquiring, Kuya Johan, and we advise them the process or the different steps. So, since the Philippines is now a signatory of the Hague Convention on Protection of Children and Cooperation in Respect of Intercountry Adoption, right, nagiging member tayo since, I believe, April 1 of 2008. So more than 10 years na tayo, right? I think 58, 19, so 15 years na tayo that we're part of the Hague adoption sa Pilipinas. Ito yung Intercountry Adoption Board, di ba? Meron na tayo dyan, tinatawag na ICAB sa Pilipinas, that they will be accepting, sila yung nag-accept ng applications from prospective adopted parents. So very common yan, Kuya Johan, but pinaalalahanan natin mga kababayan natin that since the Hague adoption process is very complex, as we mentioned, we find ways na and very expensive too, masyadong mahal at madaming mga requirements. And the reason being, Kuya Johan, is to make sure that U.S. citizens are not smuggling children in the U.S. for for other reasons other than, of course, yung sa family upbringing. Just because they're based on the reports before this Hague adoption, madali kasing magdala ng mga bata through other ways, di ba? So they came up with that Hague Adoption Convention to make sure that the prospective adopting parents are properly screened, di ba? Kung sila qualified, kung sila may mga criminal records, etc. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of process on the first step, but or first process, but we can also work with you if you're eligible under the third step, which is a lot faster and a lot easier and simpler.
Yung petition for alien relative, kung relative yung ipepetisyon, no, attorney?
Yes, but they could also be adopted children, Kuya Johan. So children are considered under immigration and nationality law as biological stepchildren and adopted children. Kaya lang, yung pag-usapan natin mamaya, may mga requirements yan, that 2 years legal and physical custody, and there need to be an adoption process sa Pilipinas, di ba? And you have to wait for a certain time, yung 2 years legal and physical custody. But going back to this Hague adoption process, Kuya Johan, as we mentioned, 2008 pa tayo niyan, may mga the reason being that is very complex is because they require you to have a home study information, right? So magkakaroon ng yung prospective adoptive parent, kailangan i-determine ng USCIS that the petitioner, yung adopting parents are suitable and eligible to adopt, di ba? Bago nila makompleto yung adoption process. Ito yung tinatawag na suitability and home study information. So that's a prerequisite, Kuya Johan, before they can file for instead of I-130, ang tawag dyan is I-800A and I-800. Ito yung sa Hague Intercountry Adoption Convention Petition.
Attorney, right at the bat, may pumapasok na tanong dito sa atin as concerns to the Filipino Americans. Of course, we're talking about U.S. citizens trying to adopt from other countries. Like for example, in this case, pinag-uusapan natin from the Philippines. Ito, attorney, may pumasok ditong tanong. How about yung mga Filipino dati na Filipino Americans na ngayon na nag-dual citizen? How does that figure into the conversation if they want to adopt something? Ano mag-a-apply doon? Yung kanilang US citizenship o kanilang Philippine citizenship?
Well, it could work to the advantage, Kuya Johan, kasi itong Hague adoption, para maipaliwanag natin yan kung ano yung better alternative. As we mentioned kanina, there's many requirements and documentation. It's also very, very expensive. Yung home adoption suitability home study na lang, napaka-expensive na. And then the whole process and the professional fees and everything is super expensive, and there's a lot of requirements. Now, kung kayo US citizen, right, and you have a dual citizenship, and you decided to adopt, halimbawa yung nephews, nieces, or even grandchildren, or close family member, or even any children for that matter na gusto ninyong, what do you call this, i-adopt, then what my recommendation is, if you are interested, is go back home. Right? Kasi yun ang difference ng Hague adoption sa yung I-130, Kuya Johan, because in the I-130 adoption petition, right, you have to be in the home country, Pilipinas, para kayo mag-adopt, di ba? Initiate the adoption process. And as we all know, na kapag kayo nag-file ng petition, right, kasama dyan ng adoption or annulment or whatever, you have to have a residency requirement, di ba? So, for adoption purposes, I believe you have to have 6 months or 1 year residency sa home country kung saan kayo nag-a-adopt. Kasi hindi pwede yung Kuya Johan na, di ba, you're filing an adoption na wala ka doon. Doon ka sa Hague adoption, right? But for the I-130 purposes, you're claiming that you're a resident of the Philippines, right? You stayed there for to maintain that residency requirement in order for you to file the adoption, right? And then initiate the process. It's a lot better kung nasa Pilipinas kayo. And I've seen clients, in order for them to avoid the very complex process, very expensive process ng Hague, they have to make some sacrifice. Isa kanilang mag-asawa na US citizen or dual citizen go back home and do the I-130 process or the process to adopt the I-130 adoption, where they have to be a resident in the Philippines, right? And then they have to be initiating the adoption, right? And then once they get the finality ng adoption, they have to wait for 2 years, right? That's the 2 years legal custody commence only once the adoption decree is issued. And then you also have to show the physical custody, where you need to show to USCIS that you live with the adopting parent or with the adopted child, during that period of time.
Nako, okay. So, maganda palang, kaya itong mga kababayan, kung meron kayong mga tanong, I'm sure, right at the bat, right at the start of the program, meron na kayong mga tanong, i-comment na ngayon para masagot ni Attorney Diza. So, Attorney, na-outline natin yung tatlong ways, the Hague process, yung non-Hague, which is the orphan, and the petition for alien relative. Attorney, let's walk them through the process naman ngayon, kung paano ngayon sila makakapag-adapt.
Yes, doon sa orphan naman, as we mentioned kanina, 'di ba? So, kung hindi sila signatory ng Hague adoption, through orphan ang process, right? So, instead of the I-130 or instead of the I-800, na ang orphan adoption is the children will be immigrating under IR3, 'di ba? So, instead the form is I-600 naman. So, yun yung process nung orphan. But also requirement, Kuya Johan, ang mga adopting parents needs to be a US citizen or lawful permanent resident. Now, doon sa age ng adopting parents doon sa Hague, kailangan may mga requirements din, Kuya Johan. So hindi pwede ang of course yung ka 21 lang, di ba? O ka 18 lang. So ang parent must be either US citizen or lawful permanent resident and 27 years old kailangan.
27?
At mas matanda siya dun sa bata ng at least 16 years older, right? At least 16 years older than the child, pero the child to be adopted must not exceed the maximum age gap, yung age gap nila between the prospective adopting parent and the adopted child, hindi lalagpas ng 45 years. So, hindi pwede mag-adopt yung 50 years old, nag-a-adopt siya ng mga 1-year-old kasi more than 45 years older yung adopting parent. So, hindi masyadong mas matanda yung nag-a-adopt. So, as we mentioned kanina dito sa Hague adoption process, di ba, it's really complicated and it's very complex. And aside from that, I mean, kailangan din na if they're married, the adopting parent, both of them should jointly file the adoption. And then may requirement na minimum income, lalo-lalo na kung nakatira sa outside the Philippines ang petitioner, kailangan 40,000 ang kanilang income, US dollars, every year. Right? So yung mga requirements, at saka wala ka dapat conviction involving crime, involving moral turpitude. Yun yung sa Hague. It's really restrictive and complicated. Now, dito sa I-130 adoption, Kuya Johan, kailangan US citizen ka, kailangan wala kang serious criminal conviction regarding sexual abuse of a minor or rape, di ba? So yun lang ang bawal doon sa I-130 kasi yung I-130 same procedure doon sa pagpe-petition ng asawa or minor children, di ba? So even if the petitioner has serious criminal records, as long as hindi siya covered under the Adam Walsh Act, ito yung sexual abuse of a minor or rape, right? Or kahit may drug conviction yung petitioner or mayroong, let's say, forgery or any other convictions, as long as hindi dun sa nabanggit natin na sexual abuse of a minor or rape, pwede mag-adopt. So yun pa ang isang difference. Now, Kuya Johan, itong I-130 na to, as we mentioned, this has been in existence even before the Hague and even before the orphan. Ang kailangan lang alamin ngayon is, let's say, sasabihin sa'yo ng US citizen na nasa Amerika ngayon, attorney, I want to adopt my nephews or nieces, and I want to adopt my grandchildren kasi namatay yung anak ko, pinetition ko yung anak ko namatay, so hindi na makakarating dito yung mga bata. So I intend to adopt my nephews or grandchildren. So what I tell them is, you can only adopt them through this Hague process, which is very expensive. Now, if you want, as yung binanggit natin kanina, you make some sacrifice, you go home, total dual citizen ka naman kung gusto mo talaga yung bata, right? Establish yung residency mo sa Pilipinas. So, technically, you are a Filipino citizen because you're adopting it. Pero sabi mo, you're Filipino-American. Now, the Hague adoption only applies kasi, Kuya Johan, if you are residing in America. You are a US citizen, petitioner residing in the US and you're trying to bring your adopt children from the Philippines, for example. But since kung kayo dual citizen, Filipino citizen kayo, and you establish your residency, right, in the Philippines, doon ka karoon ng business, nagkaroon ng trabaho, or simply housewife, di ba? Just because yung asawa mo nandito, nagpapadala ng pera, taking care of the child, that's also okay. But you already established yung residence mo doon dahil you show na, you know, you have a house, you have a business, or you have your child with you, then that's good enough under the I-130 petition. So that's one way of bringing the I-130. And as we mentioned kanina, ang mga bata for all the adoption, mga bata naman, mga requirements sa mga batang i-adopt, either kamag-anak mo or not related to you, pwedeng i-adopt. Right? But take note mga kababayan, dun sa I-130 adopting children, dapat ang age ng bata would be below 16 at the time of adoption decree. So kung kayo mag-initiate ng adoption, alam niyo naman sa Pilipinas ang daming mga requirements. Di po ba? So minsan tumatagal yan, may mga publication yan, may mga evaluation din yan. Right? So tumatagal. So make sure that, you know, i-timing ninyo, siguro mga 2 taon yung process, make sure that by the time na magkaroon ng decree, below 16 pa rin yung bata. In order for the I-130 to become valid. Ang exception lang dyan po yan mga kababayan na pwede pa rin ang over 16 until 18 provided may mga kasama na ina-adapt ng mga ibang kapatid. So for example, 3 po yung ina-adapt ninyo, right? Ranging from 5 years old, 13, and then 15. And by the time nagkaroon na issue yung adoption, 17 na yung isa, pwede pa rin for immigration purposes. Yun ang exception because there are other siblings being adopted together with the other child who is now over 16. So yun yung requirements, Kuya Johan, kailangan below 16 or with the exception with other siblings. And then yung petitioner needs to maintain 2 years legal and physical custody. Ano yung ibig sabihin ng legal? Legal custody, ibig sabihin nun, from the time na nag-issue yung decree ng adoption, magka-count ka ng 2 years. Right? Yun yung legal. Yung physical naman is you are physically with the child. Right? So, for example, mula nung, let's say, namatay ng magulang at that time of birth, right? Hindi mo inadapt kaagad yung bata. Sabi mo, 5 taon ko nang kasama yung bata. But we only initiated the adoption, let's say, after 5 years. Right? And then nag-finalize yung adoption after 2 years. So, total of 5 plus 2, 7 years. So doon ka pa lang pwede mag-file ng petition. Hindi pwedeng sabihin mo na meron na akong physical custody. Yes, you were able to comply with the physical custody, but we have to wait for the additional 2 years from the time the child was legally adopted, meaning when the judge issued the finality of the decree. So yun yung sa I-130, Kuya Johan. Maraming mga nagtatanong talaga sa atin na gusto nilang mag-file ng petition, but unluckily, kung kayo pa US citizen na, you comply with the Hague. Now, isa sa mga advice ko sa mga kababayan natin, right, let's say may gusto kayong i-petition na mga pamangkin, right, or mga, you know, wala kayong anak, gusto nyo mag-petition. What I tell them is yung if you're waiting for a petition from your parent, di ba, dahil matagal naman ang process ng pag-petition ng mga anak that age out, di ba? Alam natin 10 years yan, or may mga asawa na kayo, 20 years yan. So habang nasa Pilipinas kayo naghihintay ng petition, so instead of mag-isip lang kayo na I want to petition my nephews na karating na kayo sa Amerika, di ba? Mag-establish na kayo ng buhay. What we recommend is initiate now hanggang nasa Pilipinas pa kayo. Right? Habang you're still residing in the Philippines, wala pa kayong green card. So by the time na dumating na yung inihintay nyo after 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, right? Hopefully by the time nagkaroon na kayo ng finality ng adoption and may 2 years na kayo, and you can also include that adopting child to immigrate with you, provided you already met the 2 years legal and physical custody.
All right. Oh, mga kababayan, if you just joined us, we are talking about immigration adoption sa episode na ito ng ating Immigration Law on Your Side. Hatid po sa atin ang ating mga kaibigan from Reeves Immigration Law Group. Attorney, ilan pa sa mga tinatanong nila dito, you might have answered this already, but yung magpepetisyon, they have to be legally married here in the United States. Ano po, Attorney?
Yes, legally married, Kuya Johan, and it's a requirement that the other spouse needs to consent doon sa adoption, no? Or when they file the adoption, Kuya Johan, both spouse should file the adoption process. And remember, mga kababayan, it's not just like filing the petition now, right? For the I-130, you need to be home, you need to go back to the home country, initiate the adoption process. Ito yung you go to court, di ba? You go to court. That's how you legally adopt a child. Hindi yung automatic, Kuya Johan, sa ating mga kababayan. Minsan mahilig tayo ng shortcut, di ba? So minsan, and I've seen many clients where, unfortunately, right, they want to bring they tell them that the children, right, but they did the shortcut, like, okay, orphan itong bata or namatay na yung kapatid, di ba? Yung bata lumaki na sa kanila, and instead of getting the correct birth certificate ng bata or doing the adoption process, ipinapangalan sa kanila, di ba? So sa birth certificate pa lang, right, may mali na doon, lalo lang iba, pinapalate registration pa, di ba? And ipinangalan na doon sa adopting parent because sasabihin nila, I don't want to spend money for the adoption. And to be honest, talagang mahal ang adoption process at matagal. But you need to do the legal process, mga kababayan, because there's always a way for immigration to find out that, you know, that this child is not your child, right? Minsan may mga client tayo that they go to the medical exam and some of the questions there, have you been given birth, right, to a child? Sasabihin niya, of course, hindi or no, but isa sa mga derivative children is his child, right? So doon na nakikita yung mali na hindi mo ito legal na anak, hindi mo ito biological child. And then they will require a DNA and it proves na hindi mo anak yan, ma-charge ka pa ng human smuggling. So those are the situations, Kuya Johan, ano, sinasama sa kanilang, pinapangalan na lang sa kanilang birth certificate na sila yung biological children when in fact they were not. And the other situations is, let's say, medyo may edad na yung mother, di ba? She was already like 45 years old, right? Ng anak niya is over 20 years old, tapos bigla siya nagkaanak ulit. You know, or 50 years old na obviously hindi na rin pwedeng manganak, you know, or there are situations na alam ng immigration that at that certain age, di ba, although alam natin 50 to 55, pwede pa siguro manganak yan, but highly unlikely, di ba, or doon nagkakaroon ng suspicion ng immigration at the embassy na, hey, anak mo ba talaga to, di ba? And they will require a DNA. Siyempre sasabihin, tatakbo sa abogado na, hindi ko talaga anak at to attorney, is there any way that I can bring the child? So even if you want to bring the child, if the child is not your biological child, if not legally adopted child, there's no other way na madadala nyo ang bata. So sa mga kababayan natin nag-iisip ng ganyan, right, do it legally kasi sakit ng ulo yan at laking pagsisisi ang aabutin nyo pag dumating yung panahon that you want to bring your tinuring mong anak, tapos hindi mo rin madala because of, you know, hindi nyo ginawa sa tamang process.
Tama. Mate-technical. Attorney, ilan pa rin sa mga itinatanong sa ng ating mga kababayan. As we know, some parents bring their child due to different reasons, but probably financial reasons or another reason. Dinadala nila sa mga orphanages or mga children's homes. But they are not orphans. Are these children eligible for adoption, attorney?
Yes, they are eligible for adoption, Kuya, either under Hague, under the orphan adoption. You know, that's the second option na pwedeng gawin, you know, if you're not part of the Hague. Or either the I-130, Kuya Johan. So it does not necessarily mean na ang bata ay related sa inyo. Pwede rin mga orphans na pwedeng gawin. So either way, pwede, Kuya Johan, na i-adopt or related or orphans or not related to you.
All right. Okay. Isa sa mga tanong din nila, gaano katagal, attorney, ang process? ng pag nag-apply ka for adoption? I mean, for immigration via adoption.
Yung sa immigration by adoption doon sa I-130, medyo matagal yan, meaning the whole process of adoption in the Philippines, as we mentioned, medyo matagal kasi may mga home study din yan, may mga publication, may mga testimonies, right, and delays. Around 2 years yan, siguro, unless mabilis yung judge na mag-decide ng cases. So on top of that, you have to wait for the 2 years legal and physical custody. Tinitignan yan, Kuya Johan. So may mga sitwasyon where yung legal yung physical custody, kinu-question ng immigration yun. Nasaan ka during this time? Sabi mo, nag-immigrate ka na sa US, they initiated the adoption, na finalize na sa Amerika ka na, nasaan yung 2 years physical custody mo sa bata. So it's really important that you have the physical custody of the child. Tayo mga Pilipino kasi, Kuya Johan, is we adopt yung mga kamag-anak natin, di ba? Yung either pamangkin, as you mentioned kanina, or mga tawag nito, mga apo, right? Grandchildren. So ang nangyayari niyan is, aside from the physical custody, tinitignan din ng immigration that did you actually live with the child? And who did the child live during these 2 years physical custody? Ang nagiging problema natin is, you are very close family tight tayo where magkakasama tayo sa bahay, di ba? Nandito yung magulang mo, nandito yung anak mo, tapos yung apo mo, magkakasama sa isang bahay. Ayaw ng immigration yon, where they would say that when you adopt a child, you have to have the sole custody ng bata. Hindi pwede you're still sharing custody doon sa biological parent. So even in a community, even in a what do you call this, like one barangay, minsan pinagdududuhan ng immigration yan. Na anak mo ba talaga to? Ikaw ba ang may control? Ikaw ba nagbibigay ng allowance sa school? Saan ba umuwi yung bata? Di ba? So kung isang barangay lang kayo, isang compound, right? Nasa 3rd floor ka, nasa 5th floor yung bata and the adopting parent, kinu-question yon because the immigration doesn't want you to have that share custody with the child. You have to have the sole custody. Sino nagbibigay ng allowance? Sino ang nagde-decide? Di ba? Kung saan school siya, kung saan siya papasok, etc. So the processing time on the I-130 adopted children, Kuya Johan, it takes a while. But once you file the petition, pag below 21 yung bata, right? Assuming na na-adopt siya before 16, parang pareho lang yan sa processing time ng pagpe-petition ng minor children, which is immediately available. Kung nasa Amerika yung bata, pwedeng mag-green card ka agad, mag-adjust ka agad. Kung nasa Pilipinas ang bata, then the same process. Now, the only question is, do you have all the documents? Yung pag-usapan natin mamaya. Kompleto ka ba ng documentation? Because otherwise, immigration will request you what we call request for evidence for the legal custody, the physical custody, who has the sole custody of the child, are you sharing custody, gaano kalayo? So there are many questions that immigration might ask you. So that would mean delay kung kulang po kayo ng documentation. But for the I-130 adoption, Kuya Johan, pre-pandemic, mga 1 year, nandito na yung bata, unless may mga requests for evidence or may mga investigation. But during this pandemic, the same process dun sa mga petitions sa minor children and spouses of US citizen because they are considered as immediate relative if they're below 21.
Okay. Attorney, nabanggit niyo yung mga required documentation. Just a quick run-through. Ano po ba ang kailangan maihanda ng ating mga kababayan who are thinking to adopt a child from the Philippines or another country?
Yes, so kailangan Kuya Yon, of course, regular work for the I-130 petition. You have to show that you're a citizen or US citizen or lawful permanent resident. Yung sa children adopted abroad, kailangan of course yung decree of adoption, certificate of finality, and then of course the birth certificate showing that it was annotated that this person is adopted, and of course syempre they follow the adopting parents' last name already, right? So either there's an annotation there or the judge will order the issuance of another birth certificate, right? So yung dalawang birth certificate ng bata, kailangan i-provide yung dating birth certificate na pre-adoption and then the birth certificate after the adoption. So, and then of course, as we mentioned kanina, yung 2 years physical custody. May mga clients tayo where yung nabanggit natin kanina na, mag-i-immigrate na sa Amerika, ka-initiate pa lang yung adoption. So, how did you obtain, or how did you comply or complete the 2 years physical custody? So, pwede rin Kuya Johan, let's say, pwede sabihin niya, kasama ko nung bata 1 year, right? Bago ako nag-immigrate, ito yung evidence that he lives with me, ito yung school niya, uh, ito yung certification from school, right? Or school records niya, medical records, taxes, etc. And then when I immigrated to the US, I stayed there for 6 months. Ito yung evidence ko that I went back, and stayed for 3 months. So pwedeng i-aggregate yun. Let's say 1 year plus 3 months, 3 months, 3 months, then nakompleto mo yung 2 years. Yung another 1 year para makompleto mo yung 2 years physical custody. So it's really important dun sa I-130 petition, Kuya Johan, that you have to prove, as we mentioned kanina, 2 years physical custody. So yun yung mga requirements basically, Kuya Johan, and then of course once it's approved, it goes to the National Visa Center for the other requirements, same as petitioning family members, kagaya ng NBI clearance if they're over 16, right? Yung mga certificate of no marriage, and birth certificate, and of course the affidavit support. So yun yung mga requirements, Kuya Johan. It might be more difficult and cumbersome yung process, but we have done many adopted children, bring them through I-130 petitions. In fact, just today, right, the child entered the U.S. around, when he was 11 years old together with other siblings. So, dinala ng tita dito. And then the father had a serious medical condition. So, the aunt decided na we'll just do the adoption here kasi nandito na sila. So, pwede rin nandito, Kuya Johan. Di ba? Hindi lang sa Pilipinas, pwede rin dito. So, we helped them to do the adoption in the U.S., waited for 2 years. And then we filed for the green card kasi eligible naman sila. They were able to obtain the green card around 2013. Right? Yung dalawang bata, ito pang kinaganda kasi the child is considered as a child. So, the adopted children enjoy the same immigration benefits as biological children. Kung nagawa lahat yun. Meaning, at the time that they get their green card, Kuya Johan, right, below 18 yung dalawang bata. So automatic citizen sila because the parents are already US citizen. Right? So inapply lang nila sa US passport. And the other child, ito yung the eldest was already over 18. Kinapos lang konting panahon. Kung baka nag-exceed siya ng 18, hindi siya nag-acquire ng citizenship. We filed the naturalization around 4 months ago. And then we got the interview today. And he passed, and of course the immigration officer asked, how did you get your green card? Through my adopted mother. Sabi niya, and then passed all the English requirements, etc. And he's waiting for the interview on yesterday, April 25th. So nag-oath-taking na rin siya kaagad, Kuya Johan.
Wow.
So he was able to get the naturalization. That's one of the success cases for immigration adoption that we just handled.
Nako, congratulations. Mga kaibigan, maganda talaga na kumonsulta sa ating mga kaibigan, especially from Reeves Immigration Law Group. As we said and outlined that this is a complicated process. Attorney, being complicated it is, as it is, how practical is it and how important is it that they should consult representation katulad po ninyo?
It's really important to consult an immigration attorney, especially filing the I-130, right? I-130 or going through the Hague process, we can lead you to the proper authorities when you do the Hague adoption. Honestly, we would like to tell you that we don't do Hague adoption because, as we mentioned, it's very complicated, very complex, and very expensive. So what we're trying to do is yung I-130, and marami pa rin sa ating mga kababayan that they adopted their adopted children while they're back home, or we advise them to go home and do the adoption process, and we help them, right? It's very complicated, Kuya Johan, and I've seen many clients consulting with me after the fact, after the cases have been denied, right? Because they failed to provide yung documents that USCIS want to see, especially in 2 years legal custody, right? And the sole custody proof that they're not living with the biological parent. Now, it's really disheartening kung na-deny yung petition. Let's say, final yung petition, and probably USCIS conducted all this request for evidence and conducted some investigation. Tumagal ng 5 taon. Let's say 18 years old yung bata, and then it was delayed for a very long time. May matagal ng ganyan. Then nag-age out yung bata, 21 years old na. And then if they deny the case, right, wala kang other option but to appeal. Titingnan mo kung anong kamali mo doon. Kasi kung it's erroneous ang ginawa mo at wala tayong magagawa doon, refiling the I-130, Kuya Yon, and doing it right is an option. Pero the question is, kung over 21 na yung bata, right, and we all know na ang over 21 petition that takes about 10 years. So sayang naman. So it's really a good idea, mga kababayan, to consult, especially kung mga minor pa mga anak ninyo, right? We're hoping that you'll be reunited with them, right, after a year, after 2 years of filing the I-130. So we have office in Makati, right, and we do Zoom consultation. Just contact our office telephone numbers or go to our website at reevesimmigration.com. You can also check our contact information on our social media account at the Reeves Immigration Law Group, FJ Diza Immigration Law Attorney, right? And contact us. We give you an assessment, evaluate your case, and walk with you the process and determine kung ano yung kailangan yung i-provide, kung kailan yung weakness ng case nyo and strength ng case nyo, and will help you get an approved petition so that you will be able to joined by your adopted children here in the U.S.
Very time sensitive, kaya it's best that we do it right the first time, di ba po, attorney? Kailangan wala nga na dyan walang take two. Mahirap mag-take two. Especially kung katulad ng situation na nabanggit ni attorney kanina, nag-age out na, mahirap na yun. So, attorney, I'll give you this time to address our audience, especially regarding immigration, adoption, and if you probably have some updates with us.
Yes, we are, unang-una, Kuya Yon, maraming salamat ulit, right, for this public service that we render sa ating mga kababayan. Adopting an immigrant child is fulfilling, di ba? Whether you have children now or you have no children, it's fulfilling. But the process can be very challenging as well. Ito'y totoo, especially kung hindi nyo alam, di ba, yung mga requirements, kung anong requirements dito sa US at requirements sa home country ninyo. We also, point to you the right direction, right? How to do, to go to the lawyer sa Pilipinas. Wag yung shortcut, di ba, na, ipapangalan lang sa akin, because there's always a way to find out whether this is a biological child or not. So if you're looking for ways to make this process fast and easy, of course, hire a lawyer, immigration lawyers who can help you with with the petition, right? And we are here at Reeves Immigration Law Group. We specialize in immigration only, right? So we do consultation, phone, and in person. So yun ang sa immigration. Dun sa mga updates, Kuya Johan, we continue to receive faster immigration interviews for naturalization. For family-based, Kuya Johan, there's still waiver of interviews, meaning that immigration may not call you for an interview to determine if the marriage is legitimate. What they do now is they ask you for missing documents, like kung wala kang medical at that point, pinapadalang ka na. And then, or if it's a marriage-based, they want you to submit joint documentation, like filing taxes together, right? Bank accounts together, any other joint financial documents that you establish with your petitioner's spouse, you have to submit those. So updates natin, Kuya Johan, and of course sa mga kababayan natin, continue listening and watching our program dito sa PHLV Radio Immigration Law on Your Side, and lahat ng mga magandang programa ng PHLV Radio. Mabuhay po tayong lahat. At maraming salamat. And before I end, Kuya Johan, babatiin ko lang yung very close to me. My dad, of course, turned 82 yesterday. And my 2 children, April 1, nag 6 years old yung isa, nag 27 yung panganay, 27, who lives in Las Vegas and who will be graduating his master's degree soon. And also the eldest daughter turned 6 years old also yesterday. Happy birthday sa inyong lahat at sa lahat ng birthday celebrant for April and May. binabati ko po kayo ng maligayang kaarawan. Maraming salamat, Kuya Johan, at mabuhay tayong lahat.
Nako, napakalaking blessing yun. Sabay-sabay.
I know, April lahat.
Ang ganda. So happy birthday po sa inyong lahat from all of us here also at PHLV Radio. And attorney, bago natin makalimutan, itong American Immigration Lawyers Association, you are going to speak at their conference in June. Why don't you remind your fans?
Yes, we are really excited, and gladly, I did realize that one of the partners here at Reeves Immigration Law Group, Attorney Eric Wells, is also a speaker. So on the expert field, which is 245I grandfathering. So we're lucky to be chosen to deliver to be a speaker at the conference where immigration lawyers all throughout the United States and practitioners around the world, kasi may mga practitioners din sa Pilipinas doing immigration and everywhere, Kuya Johan, because may mga embassies worldwide, right? So they'll be attending this national conference, annual conference. We'll be talking. My topic would be very interesting, which is a very complex case, which is the Child Status Protection Act, and the moving parts, what happens if, death of petitioner, nag-age out, etc. So very interesting sa mga kababayan natin or sa mga nakikinig or yung mga practitioners ng immigration. Come and join us in Orlando. Hopefully we'll get more information for you at that conference, and we'll deliver and we'll discuss here at PHLV Radio with Kuya Johan.
Nako, napakagandang balita mga kaibigan. We've had Eric Alswell here at the program before.
Yes.
Dito sa immigration law on your side. A testament to the expertise mga kababayan ng ating mga kaibigan from Reeves Immigration Law Group. So attorney, maraming salamat again for another very very insightful and very very informative episode ng ating immigration law on your side. And nanggagaling po naman dito sa Las Vegas, Kuya Yo po, galing sa PHLV Radio Studio ng Las Vegas. Ito pong Immigration Law on your side, hatid po sa atin ng Reeves Immigration Law Group. We will see you again next time.
Reeves Immigration Law Group has been representing immigrants for nearly 40 years. Reeves Immigration Law Group has been fighting for its clients through experience and expertise. With immigration lawyers you can access at reasonable fees, even on Saturday. Payment plans are also available. Call us for your immigration solutions. We can do worldwide telephone and Skype consultations. Reeves Immigration Law Group, 1-800-795-8009. Reeves Immigration Law Group has offices in Los Angeles, San Francisco, China, and Philippines. See us at www.rreeves.com. Reeves Immigration Law Group, 1-800-795-8009.
Reeves Immigration Law Group has just brought you Immigration Law on Your Side. Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Pacific on PHL